welcome to the show. Tennessee WildCast, good to have you here again. Got a lot to talk about. You duck hunters, y'all got it made because you know what you're going to be doing now. We're going to explain that in a minute. In here with me, part of the show, co-host over there, Jason Hartman. Hello, Jason.
How's it going, Doug? Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Todd's over here again. We're going to roll Todd in here pretty soon, okay?
Yeah, we'll get him in there.
Roll Todd in. And then Joe Benedict is here. And Joe is going to be our guest today. Joe is the Assistant Chief of Wildlife and Forestry. Used to be the statewide duck coordinator. Now he just does everything. So we'll be talking to Joe today. But Jason and I got some stuff to talk to you about first.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've both been out. And we've been on the water, which hasn't been happening enough for me this spring. But it happened the other day. And it happened for you the other day. So let's talk about that before we get into waterfowl seasons and all these things that have already been, well, the waterfowl season's already been set in Tennessee. Got some current events for you, but I want to hear about your fishing trip first.
Yeah, I had a chance to go to a meeting in Georgia, Southeastern State Wildlife Fisheries and Wildlife meeting, and talk a little bit about social media and how to reach the public and that kind of thing. But I had a chance to get on the water while I was out there and caught a fish or two.
My kind of conference.
Yeah, that's my kind of conference too.
Are you going to show them?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to show a photo. Let's see. Let me get on camera too here.
Yeah.
There we go. Look at that.
Got you a little bass there.
Got a little bass. It was fun. It was a good trip.
That's a pretty looking lake.
But yeah, we learned a lot too, and hopefully we'll be able to reach our audience better, reach the sportsmen better, and let them know what's going on at Tennessee Wildlife.
You know, you were talking with other state agencies. We're trying to make this podcast work on video and audio, video, TV, and almost like a radio format, but here on the computer, on the internet.
Right.
Anybody else doing that?
You know, a couple of states were interested in it, and they liked what we were doing, and they were been thinking about doing a podcast and that sort of thing. And you know, everybody's on Facebook, everybody's on Twitter. You know, they're wondering, well, should we do Instagram? Should we do this kind of stuff? Should we do Periscope? You know, so all the state agencies are trying to reach their audience and reach their sportsmen and let them know what's going on.
And it's a great chance. It's not every day you can get a Joe Benedict out here and learn exactly what you want to learn about what's going to happen with waterfowl and put him on the spot, which is what we're going to do today.
So before you get to that, let me know. Tell me about your fishing trip.
I did. Of course, we're doing the show here in Middle Tennessee. We want everybody across the state to listen to it, but I go fishing a lot on Percy Priest, which is a great lake here, right in the city almost of Nashville. And went out there the other day, and on my fourth or fifth cast, caught a largemouth, about 5 pounds. Which I'm not a big bass guy, but this time of year on Priest and a lot of lakes, you can go throw a crankbait shallow, and you'll catch everything. But those bass are biting real good on Percy Priest, and caught 7 or 8 that day, but that was the best one on about my 5th cast. Went a couple of days later and got into the crappie in the afternoon, just throwing just a little bitty old jig, just a curly tail, chartreuse and white if you're going to Percy Priest right now, and awesome. And caught those crappie. And then we put a Facebook photographs the other day of a guy named Chris Cole that works for us. He's a lakes manager, and he goes to all these lakes because he helps manage them, and had a boat full of shellcracker that looked like they were 1.5 pounds each. It's that time of year. If you love panfish, this is your time right now.
Oh, yeah.
So,
you know, and I don't see a photo, Joe. I don't know if I can believe this story or not.
You'll see it next week. Hey, speaking of, though, you've been working on something real hard. It's also involvement that we want from the sportsmen coming to us. What is that?
Tag board. We've started this new thing called Tag Board. It brings different social media platforms all in one place: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Vine, Google+, Flickr, all those formats. If you post your photos or videos or whatnot to that, hashtag TN Wildlife, or if it's a deer or a turkey or a fish you've caught or harvested, hashtag TN Trophy Room. And that's how you can contribute to our board. And you can get there through our website. It's on the screen right now.
Yeah.
But
right there.
Right there is Tag Board TN Wildlife. So if you click read more there in the bottom left-hand corner, you could see the board. We're trying to pull it up, but if it don't come up, that's fine. And but anyway, that's how you do it. And
we'll pull it up here in a second and let them see it. But anyway, we want sportsmen to be involved with us, right? Mm-hmm. We want to get them sending their photographs of their day, and not necessarily sportsmen, boating. We don't care, right? Boating. Right. Send us photographs of nature shots if you want to.
Yeah, just people enjoying the outdoors, and then the outdoor community can come see what everybody else is doing. You know, this is what my fellow sportsmen are getting into.
We just want folks to participate with us, right?
Yep.
All right. Lee Wilmot, who works here, puts out press releases all the time. Put one out following our meeting the other day, Joe. You had a meeting with the commission. You did a great job up there in front of 13 full complement of commissioners the other day. Every one of them there, and Joe's first one to go at them and talking about a lot of things going on with the waterfowl season. Of course, Lee put out a release on it for this agency, and you can really read the releases out on our website also under the newsroom. But you did a couple things. Well, you did more than that, but the waterfowl season is actually set this year, and also the dove season is already set this year. The early wood duck, the early geese, all that stuff ready to go, right?
That's correct. We're much earlier this year than in past years due to a change in the federal regulation setting process. So data are used in the fall to set the next fall's hunting season. That's kind of the short version of what happens. So we were able to set our seasons now for next year.
Okay, and
this fall.
Let me back. You just sort of said it, but I'm so used to waterfowl season being set, and then the agency having to rush to try to get out a guide, the guide, so sportsmen can read it or get it on the site. No more. What did the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service do that you could do this earlier?
Well, Canada for a long time has used essentially year-old data, the breeding population data and then the harvest data. They've used data from a year previous to set their seasons earlier because obviously the birds are breeding in the late spring. Canada, the ice out doesn't happen until later on, and so they're counting birds in May and June. They're cranking those numbers. We used to have a flyway meeting in July, and so it'd be late July before we would know what those seasons were. And dove season starts as early as September 1st.
Oh yeah, we were pushing it always.
So using the previous year's data allows us a little more time. There are some other reasons that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did that, which have to do with public comment. There's a federal register that publishes proposed seasons. The public is allowed to comment, and then they publish a final season, kind of like our commission. They hear proposed, and then they vote on the final proclamations or rules and regulations. So using last year's data allows us to gain those extra months and provide greater time for public input, and then also a greater notice for sportsmen as well of when the seasons will be. Okay,
that's wonderful news. Now, we talked about this. You still called it a loaded question, but I got to ask it anyway. Does that mean we're going to get one thick guide now that's got the waterfowl in it and the turkey and the deer and everything else?
Well, that's still to be determined. I've reached out to some colleagues in the Atlantic and Mississippi flyways and asked what other states were doing. Most of the states have contracts with vendors that publish the hunting guides, and so our contract goes for a couple more years. But we're still in discussions of whether that would be economical, whether sportsmen would like that or not. There's an idea of having a tear-out middle piece with some waterfowl regulations in that. Because the hunting guide is so thick. So it's possible that all the hunting regulations could be in one place in the next several years.
I like that idea. I mean, the sportsmen are what's important out there. What do they like and what do they like to carry around? But boy, to have it all and not have to worry about getting another one and not to worry about crating those things all over the place. That's a personal thing because we're always carrying boxes all over the place around here. Joe, what is the waterfowl season this year?
The regular late waterfowl season?
Yeah, let's talk late waterfowl season,
okay.
the big one, and we'll get into some of the other ones too. But
sure, I think we've got a slide to show on the screen, but I'll just read
Todd,
the dates.
there's one that's just the duck season up there, and we'll get into that one in a minute. Yeah,
I'll just read off the dates.
There you go, thank you.
Essentially, there's been no change to the season.
Let's try another one, or is that it? There you go. Now you got it. All right.
So essentially, there was no change to the season because we used last year's data. The waterfowl are doing well.
Right.
We have a 60-day season, 6 duck bag limit. The only thing we did was adjust the calendar dates. This year's a little different than last year. So we have an opening weekend, which is different in Reelfoot. That's earlier. You can see on the screen November 12th and 13th. The duck season opens in Reelfoot. The remainder of the state is later. It's the weekend after Thanksgiving, November 26th and 27th. And then both of those zones will open up again on Saturday, December 3rd, and go through the last Sunday in January. So that's the latest we can go based on federal regulations. And then just at the very bottom, the 2 Saturdays immediately following the duck season are the youth waterfowl hunting days.
Always the best days of the year, right?
So February 4th and February 11th. That's right.
Awesome.
Do you think it'll be this way for years to come? Stay this way for the future?
I think so.
We were talking Jason being as young as he is, he doesn't realize that once upon a time, we didn't have 60 days, 6 ducks all the time, right?
That's right. I first started hunting. It was 30-day season with 3 ducks, and so I guess let me retract my answer to your question. This framework of the season in Tennessee will be like this, provided we have a 60-day season. I think this is kind of what hunters have come to like and expect. It works well for the ducks that we have migrating to the state. Regarding the long-term nature of a 6-duck 60-day season, it all depends on water. The prairies need water. Ducks need water, obviously, to breed and raise their young. And so if we continue to have wet years on the prairie and duck numbers are high, we'll have these 60-day seasons. The last 2 seasons, in fact, we estimated the waterfowl breeding population, as the highest on record. So last year was the highest, and the previous year was slightly less than that, but the highest to date. So
Right.
duck numbers are doing well. There's a lot of oil exploration in the Dakotas and other places right in the heart of the prairie. We don't know what those impacts will have long term, but for right now, the duck numbers are up. They're doing well.
Awesome.
That is great. So we'll always go. The way I've seen it through my years, you always go with the most. I don't know if liberal's the right word here, but the most you can give a duck hunter, you go with most of the time. Correct.
Right.
If that's what if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service sends you 60 days, you're going to do 60 days.
That's right. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is ultimately in charge of protecting migratory birds, both game birds that we hunt and non-game birds. And so they're a little bit conservative in nature based on the science, the biology of the birds, and the current year's counts and habitat. And so whenever they say you can have a 60-day season, then all the states say, okay, well, we know this is a safe thing for the birds. And so most states take everything that we're allowed to have. Some states don't, but most states do.
Okay, so it's all good news, and want to remind hunters if you don't see the stuff up here, can't remember the dates very well, all of it's out on the website or will be soon, and it's tnwildlife.org. And Joe, I need to mention real quick too, out on the site right now, if you go on that slider you saw coming across our website, there's one that's talking about the proclamations that are out on our site right now.
That's right.
And those are what are those proclamations? What do they mean to a sportsman coming into the site?
The proclamations, there's a link on the homepage that talks about season setting. Folks can go there now for the next couple of weeks. And the proclamation is essentially what our commission, or our Board of Commissioners, uses to proclaim or designate, basically create a rule that sets the hunting seasons. That's dates, bag limits, seasons, manner and means, which is kind of the legal things you can and can't use while you're hunting. So currently on that website, there's a link, I think we're trying to go there now, that has a link to what we call the red line proclamations. And so what we do is we took last year's rules and regulations that the commission passed, we redlined them, and the dates that I just mentioned,
Right.
They're different than last year. So the proclamation has a red line, a scratch out of last season dates, and the new date in there in red text. So they can go look at, there's a big game proclamation that has deer and elk and
There you
turkeys,
go.
all the big game.
Right.
There's a wildlife management area. Some of the things that might change in a wildlife management area, you might have new areas added, areas closed, different small little regulation changes. So folks can go to that website, and we're looking for public comment. After the commission meeting last month, you guys may have seen it online. There's a link to the commission meeting as well here. You can watch the video. If you're interested in a particular segment, you can read the red line proclamation, and there's an email address. You can also write and provide us your input on these changes that the agency is recommending to the commissioners. There's also I think it may be the first link up there. Yes, proposed recommendations from the commission meeting. These are things that came up at the commission meeting that essentially the commissioners have asked the agency to look at. There's some notable ones in there about the definition of an antlered buck. For a long time, it's been 3 inches or less. There was some discussion about that. And there's a few other things on there that came up about bag limits for turkeys during youth season and things like that. So check that out. Provide your comments back to the agency. I believe it's March 9th is the deadline for those comments. And we'll take those into account when we go to the commission meeting in May to finalize these proclamations.
All right, Joe. I'm kind of getting you all over the place here, but the antlerless thing is interesting. For years, it has been an antlerless deer, one that doesn't count toward your buck limit, is an animal that has either no antlers or below 3 inches,
That's
under
right.
3 inches.
Right.
So what's the thinking here? Do you think with the commission in this case? What are they wanting to find out?
That's a good question. I'm not in charge of the deer program. There's another assistant chief that's
Chuck.
in charge
We'll
of
get
that.
Chuck in here.
Chuck could answer that more detail than I can. But it's kind of confusing for folks. An antlerless deer has antlers, so what does that really mean? So there's a long history there of shooting deer in low light, far away, that you may or may not be able to see the antlers. And so I think the commissioners just kind of want to look at this issue again and kind of maybe update it. So we're looking at other states around Tennessee and seeing what they have for regulations. And what the commission asked was for us to bring them a proposed change in that definition. And that was really all they said. So stay tuned for the next commission
That's
meeting
going to be interesting to see.
and see where it goes.
if you watch the meeting, we had a couple different definitions I think that were presented from the other states, and they're real similar. They're all
They're very close.
right there at the same kind of definition,
Right.
but just a little different in each one, seemed like.
Right.
Yeah, and we will get Chuck in here to talk at great length. The meeting, by the way, is May 12th and 13th. It's at
Yeah.
AEDC this year, which is in Middle Tennessee. It's at the Gossick Center. And Jason and Todd will post that thing once it's done, so you can watch the entirety of the meeting. You can watch Joe
Yeah.
go back up there. Maybe Chuck have to do more this time, Joe. But
Chuck's got
Try to
more
have
than
that up. We'll try to have that up directly after the meeting, and
yeah,
people can watch it. Public can see
and
what
you can
went on.
watch it. And Todd, let's throw up that chart real quick. While we're on deer, I want to get back to some dove and stuff in a minute, but while we're on deer, this is the proposed new look of what deer hunters will have across the state. These are the new units that the agency has proposed. I think the commission might have wanted some of this to be done, and that's what you'll be looking at. And this is on our website, okay? It's hard for you to comprehend all of it in a few seconds, but it's out there at tnwildlife.org. And something like this will probably appear in our hard copy hunting guide. Is that right, Joe?
That's correct.
Okay, so that gives you your season dates and what your units might look at as the agency continues to try to manage the deer herd across Tennessee, right? And the buck limit will remain, I'm assuming, probably at 2.
The buck limit is going to remain at 2. And the biggest change that folks should realize in this really complex graphic here is the main part here is this antlerless bag limit table. And you may recall from the hunting guide, there was almost a full page list by county with certain weeks and days that you could and could not harvest antlerless deer. The commission wanted to increase. They wanted to be able, hunters in Tennessee, to be able to harvest an antlerless deer during gun season, at least a portion of gun season in every county in Tennessee. And this new unit with season bags, accomplishes that.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So it's out there for you to go look at, and also while we're just thinking about the bigger game, I will say I looked at our harvest the other day for turkey. Just kind of get a look at see where we are with a few weeks to go yet. 26,000 birds. So hunters, I think, are having a pretty good year. Now Joe said he's not necessarily having a pretty good year, and I know Jason's not having a pretty good year, and. So
they were all over the place this morning.
They're on the road on the way to work every day. I had a friend come up from out of state, and we were trying to take his son out and shoot his first turkey, and we had birds gobbling a couple times on the roost, and that was it. So it was a long couple of days.
But it's fun anyway.
It's fun. It's a beautiful time, like you said earlier. It's a beautiful time to be out in outdoors in Tennessee.
Just period outdoors. And Joe, speaking since we're on turkeys, we've got a fall season that's probably got addressed some the other day, and there are some pretty big changes in the fall season.
Right. We did a survey last year that some of the audience may have participated in. It was a survey done by Dr. Pudial at University of Tennessee, and it was targeted at spring turkey hunters, and it was asking for opinions on various issues related to the season, the timing of the season, the length of the season, the bag limits. It's a very popular season in Tennessee. About 81% of people that are turkey hunters or buy turkey licenses go. About 50% of people harvest at least one bird. I guess I'm in the other 50% this year so far. And
Me too.
In general, about 80% of people, 60% and 20, you'll see there, are satisfied with kind of the overall season. And so if we could go to the next slide there, this is it's called a Likert scale. And so on the bottom, you see the importance. And so when we ask a question about, let's say, survey length, where the answer falls on this bottom scale gives you the importance. So 5 being very important, 1 being less important. And the same on the left, it has to do with satisfaction. So if you're not very satisfied, you'd be down here. And if you're very satisfied, you'd be at a 5. So the answers or the responses to this survey, you can see they all fell in this upper right, which means the questions that we asked about, the season length and bag limit, were very important to most hunters, and they're also nearly very satisfied. So there's one more graph that zooms in on this.
There you go.
This information is also in the commission presentation. If you want to go back and watch that.
Is it important that we do a lot of surveys at TWRA. The creel clerks out on the water do surveys. You're doing these surveys where you call. Do you want the sportsmen to participate in what we're doing? Their voice. You feel like you guys are trying to listen as often as possible to the voice of the sportsman, and can you always do everything they want them to do?
Oh, that's a good point. We do just try to listen, and obviously these statistically valid surveys. This was a big survey; it cost a fair amount of money. You want to get your sample size, and you want to have an error term. And so, when we said that 60% of people were satisfied, we want to know the margin of error around that. So you might say 60% plus or minus, 10% of people were satisfied or very satisfied or whatever the answer was. So it's very important that we that we hear from folks. But your second point is correct, that we can't listen to everybody because there are such diverse opinions out
You
there.
can listen to everybody, but you can't do what everybody
Right.
wants.
We
You got
can't
to
make
manage the
everybody-
birds and right.
We can't make everybody happy. So
And I will bring up, it's not just perfect across the state with turkey. I think we're a great turkey state, but there's some problems going on down in the southern part of Middle Tennessee. We've got a few things we're dealing with down there. Some folks don't think there's as many birds down there as there used to be, but we're looking at it, working on it, right?
that's right. In fact, we proposed a study with the University of Tennessee, a 5-year study, putting radios on birds. We're hoping to hire some graduate students.
Transmitters, things, track
radio
'em.
transmitters,
Yeah.
right? Tracking hens, looking at survival, causes of causes of mortality, including disease. There are things that we don't know about turkeys in Tennessee. We've stocked turkeys historically, and now they seem to have been sort of restored, and they're kind of bouncing around at some level. But again, we don't know the major factors that influence these turkey populations. One of the things that our staff shared with the public and the commission at the last meeting in April were some numbers of harvest in turkeys. In the harvest of turkeys, I just want to be clear, it's not the same as a turkey population because we don't have those numbers. Part of this study will help us get at some population numbers. But when you look at turkey harvest as an index or indication of population, obviously if you have few animals out there, there's few that you're able to harvest. So the more you have, the more chances you have to harvest. So the harvest of turkeys, especially in Middle Tennessee, has declined in the last number of years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unnatural for a population.
Right.
Once you've restored them, they bounce up around. It's kind of a little up and down curve based on carrying capacity. So we're not too shocked about that, but we are keeping our eye on that. Because of that, there was a recommendation about the fall turkey season.
Thank you. Yeah,
the
good.
bag limits that we proposed to the commission last month in April to reduce the turkey bag limit in the fall in these counties. There's a whole bunch here. I guess you can't see my hand.
This is an either sex turkey hunt, right?
It's an either sex
in the
turkey
fall, right?
Right,
Okay.
Right. So again, these are mostly Middle Tennessee counties, and there's two lists here. You see the top one. It's a longer list. We recommended reducing the fall daily bag from 6 to 3 in those number of counties, and then there were 2 counties we recommend reducing it from 3 to 1.
Was this approved already, or is this going to be approved at the Gossick or voted on there anyway?
This will be approved at the next. At the May
okay, but you
commission
don't
meeting.
see any problems. It probably will be done.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
We also looked at harvest. Very few people kill the daily bag limit of these birds, so
Right.
we don't think we want to make sure the season stays open, but we don't think we'll be really impacting a lot of hunters to that degree.
Okay, so look at a reduction there. That's still a lot of birds. 6 to 3, that's getting out and having a good time. 3 to 1, that reduces it some, but that's a daily bag, right, during this fall season?
That's correct.
Okay, and we want to get those birds back and healthy and doing good down there. Again, it's May 13th through May 13th and 14th. Is
12th and 13th.
12th and 13th, pardon me, thank you. 12th and
what I've
13th
got,
at
yeah.
the Gossick Center.
So Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, Thursday, Friday. There you go. And again, you guys will be streaming it out there. All right, Joe, let's bring you back to where we started. And first thing I should have asked you right off really was about your background. You came to us from where, and what is your background?
I grew up in rural Connecticut, New England, and grew up hunting and fishing. Wanted to be a vet. Found out that I had to go to school for a long time to be a vet, and said, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go into wildlife. So I went to wildlife. Then I found out pretty quick, you need a master's. So went to school in Maine for my bachelor's degree. Worked at Auburn University for my master's, so about 100 miles south here in Nashville. I worked on waterfowl in Gunnersville Reservoir, part of the Tennessee River. So had a great time there. In fact, the gentleman I talked about bringing his son up turkey hunting, he was from there. I met him at graduate school. And so he visited this past weekend. So worked in Louisiana in some wetlands, did some waterfowl projects there, and then got a permanent job, which is what we all look for after college, in Florida, working as a statewide waterfowl biologist there, and eventually became their statewide coordinator and had a staff of a number of folks.
Are there ducks in Florida? I thought it was just fish down in Florida.
There's a lot of fish,
Yeah.
and I've caught a few of those, but there are a lot of ducks. It's a pretty diverse state.
Yeah.
Lots of blue-winged teal. There's some ducks there that we don't have in Tennessee. The Florida mottled duck, which looks like a hen mallard, sort of, or a lighter colored black duck. They've got whistling ducks, fulvous whistling ducks, and black-bellied whistling ducks. So there's a great diversity of waterfowl there. It's a little different. You're going to wear a short sleeve shirt and a bug tamer for a lot of their season if you go farther south. But
Yeah.
Lake Okeechobee, there's some great history of waterfowl.
I
hunting.
bet there is.
Along Merritt Island on the Space Coast, there's some great waterfowl hunting there. So my wife's from Alabama, and she's a jazz singer. So when this opportunity came up to be the state waterfowl coordinator here in Tennessee, it was really a no-brainer, and I felt odd asking or mentioning that in my interview that this is the only other place I'd want to live. So fortunately, got the job here as a waterfowl coordinator, and then, like you mentioned, I became the assistant chief about not quite a year ago.
Okay. All right. So it's just more to do is what you've done.
That's right.
Not just
That's right.
waterfowl. Now let's get back, Todd. Let's throw up the chart of all the seasons that are going to begin, because this will be here before you know it. And these are pretty much set, ready to go, Joe, right?
That's
We're
right.
talking about the early wood duck, the early goose, the early teal. We're talking about dove seasons, snipe seasons. Do we really have snipe in Tennessee?
We do.
And tell me about what's going on, Joe. And people can start making plans, right?
That's right. So these the waterfowl season regulations were off by one meeting at the commission meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So at the last meeting, these were finalized. I'll show you a slide at the very end here. I think we've got the graphic about the timing for next year. So we want to make folks aware that because of the federal change in timing, Tennessee obviously will change our timing. So the graphic up here, whoops.
Let's go back, Todd.
Go back to the
We'll
other
get back to
slide.
that, yeah.
We've got the, so these are finalized seasons, and the ones in white are the ones that changed for this year.
Okay.
The Virginia and Sword Rail and Moorhen and Purple Gallinules, we moved those seasons from later on until earlier
And Joe,
because
I'm sorry to interrupt just for a second. Do have a good population of those? I've always seen those. I've never hunted them, but is there a pretty good number of moorhens and purple gallinules and those kind of stuff?
Moorhens and Gallinules are easy to see when you're out driving along in a boat. Rails and rails, Virginia and Sword Rails, Clapper Rails, King Rails, they're called secretive marsh birds because they're very secretive. So
Right.
sometimes you do a callback with a tape. You can get them to come out of the vegetation. But there's not a lot of hunters necessarily in Tennessee that hunt these birds. We did have a request from a hunter that said, these seasons, we had the seasons during waterfowl, late waterfowl season, and these birds are out of here. Virginia Sword Rails don't like cold, so when it's 20 degrees,
They're gone.
they're gone. So this makes sense. Most of the states around us have a similar season.
And
September
okay.
through
And I'm
November.
kidding about snipe. I actually hunted snipe once or twice years ago. I had a great time hunting those things. They were fun to hunt. But anyway, go ahead with your thoughts.
So the Canada goose season in September, it's always September 1st through the 15th, so no change there. The wood duck and teal season, it's a 5-day teal season that starts on Saturday, September 10th, which is the second Saturday, goes for 5 days, closes on a Wednesday. And then we have this experimental teal-only season after that. The blue-winged teal populations are very high. There's
Good.
been a lot of work done at the national scale in order to assess their populations and look at harvest potential is really what we call that. And so we have this experimental season. The experimental part of this is we've got to go out and watch hunters hunt. And if they shoot at ducks that are not open, in other words, if they shoot at wood ducks or any mallards or early migrating pintails or anything like that, obviously that would be a violation. And so the experimental part is that we want to, the feds want to make sure that we're not shooting at non-target species.
Take care of yourself and do what you're supposed to, right?
So make sure you know what a teal looks
Keep
like.
your seasons.
Right. So that's the 4 days after that. Woodcock season is the same time period every year. It opens on the last Saturday in October there. And then the snipe season is very late at the end because of when they migrate. So November 4th to February 20th.
Everything you're trying to do, Joe, and I think that's part of your philosophy as it should be. You're trying to get these birds, I think, occurrence or migration, their peak migration or occurrence in Tennessee. That's what you'd like to see.
Yeah, overlap the hunting season with the timing that the birds are here, as well as maintain tradition. Obviously, we want hunters hunt around Thanksgiving things too. That it's important to have season opens.
I know our hunters love the wood duck and teal season too, but don't take it for granted. The wood duck, the agency worked really hard to keep that wood duck season here by doing a lot of trapping and a lot of banding. So don't take it for granted, right?
That's right. And we continue to trap wood ducks. The other thing that the agency banding program has helped is this national change from 2 during the regular duck season from 2 wood ducks a day to 3 wood ducks a day. That strictly had to do with banding and some analysis that was done at a not continental, but very large scale banding project, banding using wood duck bands.
Okay, and Mr. Todd, go ahead. Let's show that last one because we're going to run out of time here in a little bit of when folks can give us suggestions, right? Oh gosh, we're going to, go ahead. That right there. Talk about that one more time, Joe.
Right. So next year, again, we have this new federal process. This year, rather. It's already this year.
It is.
We'll be soliciting public comments on our website from October 15th and November 15th. The agency will bring proposed recommendations to the commission in January, and then finally, we have the final vote on those waterfowl and all the migratory game bird seasons in February.
Okay, and I didn't mean to do this to you, but we could do 30 minutes on sandhill cranes, but there is a sandhill crane season real quick.
That's right. Okay, so the dates for crane season are December 3rd through January 12th. Then we have a 3-day closure. It's closed on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it reopens on January 16th through the 29th. The closure is for the Crane Festival in Birchwood.
All right, Joe, you did a great job. I shorted you on that.
We'll have to get him.
We'll get you back.
We'll have to get him back. Yeah, we got more to talk about.
All right, Jason, where can they see us?
They can watch on or listen on tnwildcast.com or watch on TWRA.tv.
All right.
That's as simple
Thanks,
as it
everybody.
gets.
Thank you, Todd. Great job. Thanks, Jason. Thank you, Joe. We'll be back next week.